Hello, I'm Jackie Ware,
I'm Kelly Stack.
And I'm Erin Johnson.
and you're watching On Air with Jackie Ware. Welcome back to On Air with Jackie Ware. Today I'm joined with Erin Johnson, Business Development Manager with Social Capture, and Kelly Stack, Vice President of Operations, to talk about how social media has moved beyond posts and platforms to become a meaningful part of the leasing strategy, resident engagement, reputation, and community performance. Let's dive into it, ladies. Okay, so Social Capture works specifically in multifamily social media and digital advertising. From your perspective, Kelly, what separates a community that is simply posting from one that is using social media as a true performance driver?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference there is communities that are just posting are really task oriented. And we will sometimes hear things that are like, I have to post every day, or I need to post 3 stories every day. And it's missing that intentionality. And that's really where we see the difference with communities that are focused on performance is they're intentional about what they're posting and why they're posting. It's not about volume anymore. It's not about getting up a post at noon and 3 p.m. every single day to make sure that you're getting those vanity metrics. It's more about creating mini stories online for your prospective future residents, for your current residents, and focusing less on all of the metrics that are kind of blown out of proportion as ways to show your best at social media.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. And we do hear that on our teams. It becomes very taxing if they don't have a true strategy or a tool, because then they're scrambling for content that isn't necessarily their best efforts or even the community's best face. So, from an operations perspective, what do you think multifamily leaders should understand about the connection between social media, leasing performance, and the resident experience? Erin, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I think a good analogy, this is going to age me, but when I started leasing on site, it was really drilled into you about the drive-by traffic, making sure your property was polished and you had the flowers in place and the flags and the banners and all of that. And you really took that into consideration. While that's still really valuable, I think you can think of social media as the new drive-by. That is where your renters are going first to take a look deeper into your community after they've already seen your website. And so really approaching it from that lens and understanding that it really does weigh and tip the scale in that decision making process.
The new drive-by, I love that.
Yes.
All right. So social capture emphasizes customer content and strategy tailored to each community. Why is that level of customization so important in multifamily specifically?
Yeah, I think for social media in general, the people who are consuming it are better educated on what a generic plan looks like. All of those posts that are the very, very broad ranging. Happy National Donut Day.
Yeah.
Happy St. Patrick's Day without anything else going on behind post with no further strategy happening. Consumers and renters can spot that. They see it, they know it, and they can clock it. So when we're creating content for our communities, we never want to stick with those generic, non-customized sort of blanket posts because it really takes away from, like I said earlier, the intentionality. It doesn't feel intentional when you're seeing the same exact Happy National Donut Day across 17 different properties.
Yes.
So we like to have moments that can relate specifically to the resident experience or creating that imagination for that prospective future renter of what would my life look like at this particular community. While a lot of communities can seem similar on paper, they are all individualized. So that customization really matters.
Yeah, I think so as well. You can tell when it's just someone checking a box off their
Right.
task list.
Yes.
And that's what the Happy Donut Day does for that. At Pegasus, we know that every community has its own market, resident profile, and competitive set. So, how can social media help tell the story of an individual asset more effectively?
I would really challenge people to think of their social media as the gateway into their neighborhood. So, not just expanding on the community itself, but also looking at the hyperlocal piece of things. Is the best coffee shop down the road? Then we should be promoting that and really building on that lifestyle of that neighborhood to help really hammer that home beyond just a task list, that you really understand what the renter's lifestyle looks like and a day in their life.
Yeah, I think that does really help. And I think cross networking is more important than ever right now, but that allows you to open up a lot of different avenues. So, renters are often looking for communities online before they ever fill out a form, call the office, or schedule a tour. What should multifamily leaders understand about that early digital first impression?
Yeah, the key here for social presence is a lot of renters are using social as their search engine. They're not using Google. They're not going straight to your website. They're going straight to Instagram, and they're using that search feature in Instagram as their search engine for finding out about things in their area. So, having that very first impression, it's even layered above your website. It's even layered above them taking a drive by, like Aaron said, used to be end all be all of how people would get that first impression was you did do that drive by experience. But now that online footprint for everyone is starting on a social page rather than even starting on the community's website sometimes. And the way that I like to think about it, that I think multifamily operators can think about it too, is that your website is really a list of what you have. We have a state of the art fitness center, we have a rooftop lounge, we have a pool deck. But your social pages are bringing that lived experience to those amenities that you have so that people can imagine themselves, what would a day in my life look like here? What would my perspective be when I wake up in the morning at my beautiful new community and I can go to the state of the art fitness center for my morning workout and I can lounge by the pool with my friends and have a great birthday party or whatever it is. So having that social storytelling aspect is more of an impactful and authentic experience for people online, kind of superseding the website at this point.
And to that note, I recently planned a vacation with my husband for my anniversary, and we were going to Banff. And I was in Instagram searching all the different locations, restaurants, because I just feel like it gives you, like you say, more of that lived in raw experience than a website. And it also validates a website, right? It's going to validate, okay, they are who they say they are. And I just think it gives you a much deeper look. And so looking at social media in that lens, and that's how your renters are trying to discover you, and they are taking a peek behind the scenes, really understanding what they're seeing on social.
So, you would say then the social media is the personality
Yes,
of the
that is a
property. So,
perfect way to put it.
it's bringing out the personality.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
over half of renters say they remember seeing your apartments on social media. And when you go to the 18 to 24 demographic, that jumps all the way up to 67%. So we know it's a valuable metric in that whole leasing decision.
Absolutely. And what would you recommend if we have people that are wanting to post and they have been, but maybe they're not generating the leads or getting the notifications from it or something. But what would you recommend as a way to stand out if you're posting something?
Yeah, I think knowing the personality of your community, are you high end and luxe? Are you fun and quirky? Is your team that welcoming, homey experience? What is that tone for you? Because people can spot inauthentic. People can spot when you're being inauthentic.
Yeah.
So, if you know your own personality of your community, it's a great way to start the brainstorming of, are we going to hop on this trend? Are we not? Is it going to be something that feels like us, or is it something that we're just doing to try to gain those vanity metrics? And a lot of times now, with the way that the algorithms are working, the signals on Instagram are not always going to be showing you the vanity metrics to show your success. So, having those views and impressions and really increasing that awareness is something that we put a lot more stock behind now rather than just how many likes did we get, how many comments did we get. Things like shares or saves are much more indicative of real intent from your prospective renters. So, looking at some of the deeper metrics, how are those signals affecting how your content is performing? is really a new era of the social data that we're seeing.
Yeah, I would think the saved, because, I do that. When I'm using social media, the things that I like or want to go back to, I always save them.
Yeah.
And I would think that would be a huge people.
Saves and sends when you're sending a DM to your friend, hey,
Mhm.
have you seen this? Check this out. You're probably not also going to be commenting and liking that post necessarily, but it shows so much more intent on your end.
Yeah, absolutely. Just in the middle of the night, scrolling with your two friends that you send everything to. How should operators think about social media as part of the leasing journey before a prospect connects with the on-site team? So, how should operators think about social media as part of the leasing journey before a prospect ever connects with an on-site team?
Social media can and should be a great first impression for any community. So, like we said earlier, that first aspect that they're seeing of your community is often going to be your social pages because renters are using social as their search engine. So they're going to see that personality from day one. And a really key piece that I would want operators to remember is if your potential future renter is going onto your Instagram page and they see that your most recent post was from 200 weeks ago, they're
Yeah.
really not going to have that trust and authenticity built in anymore. A lot of people will think, oh, well, how many times can we post about the pool? How many times can we post about the rooftop lounge? How many times can we say our friendly leasing team is here to help? But having that consistent activity is really the key here. One of the things that I compare it to is like I follow a candle brand on Instagram. I've been following them for years. All they do is post about candles.
Yeah.
They just post about here's our candle scents. These are the scent notes. We have new holiday releases, and it's the same 3 candles every year that they release at the holidays. But I still follow that brand, and I might not be interacting with them constantly, but it's a great reminder every time I see them. It brings that awareness back and it makes me more likely to, when I see them in a store, actually purchase that candle. And I think it's similar for the renter journey here that the activity, the consistency, even if you feel like you're posting about the same thing over and over, it really does matter to build that online reputation and make your community feel like it's a thriving, lived in community and it's not something that is inactive, dull, hasn't been around for 200 weeks.
Yes, social media really is your trust builder. That is where they're going to see, do I trust this brand, this company?
Yeah, I love the idea of just posting different, like taking concept of the pool, but then like breaking that down. Like you can focus on the chairs, you can
Mhm.
focus on the different degrees the sun's hitting the pool deck, what you can do in the pool. Like there are so many more facets of the amenity spaces that they can break down and show a different way of showing the same content over and over again.
And it's also a great nudge for your residents of your community that are already there. When I lived in my very first big adult apartment that I was so excited to move into a luxury community, I used our pool deck on the rooftop one time in the whole year that I lived there. But I also was never following them on social. I don't think they even had a social page at the time. This was
Probably
years
not.
and
Yeah.
years ago. But it's a great nudge for your community residents to engage. And oh, yeah, I do have that gorgeous luxury pool. Maybe I should go there this weekend. Maybe I should invite some friends over. Maybe I should have a great morning workout in our state of the art fitness center because I just saw it while I was sitting here scrolling instead of doing something with my day, which a lot of us can relate to. I think we've all been there where it's like a great little reminder, a little nudge to keep that community thriving.
Yeah, I love that idea too. Like what you can do in the space, like just even more content there, having a party, having a few friends over, enjoying some fruit by the pool. Okay, so what types of content are you doing the best job right now of helping renters move from awareness to action?
I love that you just literally alluded to what types of content are performing. It's really all about lived in.
Okay.
So you get this really great on site photography that's polished, high quality, that works beautifully for a website. But when you're talking about social, people crave the first person point of view, using that space. How are you
Mhm.
going to use it? Conveying an emotion with the space versus just showing them empty inventory. That's really performing well, especially in reels. People love to digest this short form content. You can bring it to life, give it a little personality, like we say. Carousels is another one. It's really having a big come up in 2026 with the way Kelly mentioned with how the algorithm has now moved from traditional likes and comments as your major weighing factors. It's really just about signals. So actions taken on Instagram. And with carousels, a hack there is every swipe signifies to Instagram the relevance of that post.
Oh, okay.
And you can get multiple pieces of content in one singular post with the way the slides are, and then add a storytelling component to it. So maybe it's your top 3 favorite coffee shops in walkable distance to your property, and add captions to keep people viewing and swiping, and make it also localized so it's relevant not only to your residents, but anyone in the area. And that'll help boost your overall brand awareness. Of course, stories. I think that's just such a fun, raw format that everyone likes to digest. You skip the line, you get to go immediately to the top. You can make it interactive, again, leaning into the signals of the algorithm, add some fun polls, do fun graphics, GIFs, make it as silly as possible because that format really lends itself to that.
Yeah, and then no one can see it again. So if
Yes.
you make a mistake, it's where you can try something out. What can a community's social media presence reveal about the on-site experience, the team, and the resident culture?
We love to work with the on-site teams in creating content because that, to Erin's point about the lived-in experience, that's really who's driving it for community residents is the on-site team. And so being able to partner with our on-site clients who can give that perspective of being able to partner with our clients, with the on-site teams to create content that feels still polished and professional and on brand, where they don't have to become graphic designers themselves, but working with social capture so that we can take the kind of lived in experience that they're hosting for their residents and bring it to life in their social pages. So I love to see things like Pet of the Month, celebrating birthdays, celebrating first time move ins during lease up. That's a type of content that we love to receive from our on-site teams is this is our, first resident. First resident ever. That's a great thing to
Huge.
celebrate. Really fun, really great, and has that authentic, joyful feel that someone who's entering their new home for the first time brings. People can spot that when you have that content that really is coming from a place of truth. And the on-site teams can really be a great helping partner in creating that.
They really are what humanizes the brand. And so, to Kelly's point, I think featuring the intangibles that they can bring and collaborating with them, but not having them take the whole creative lift, really will set your pages apart.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the teams, they probably know the resident, the community, all the benefits, but they may not know how to articulate it.
Right.
Or like you say, bring it to life for everybody. They can do it in maybe their sales pitch when they're touring, but they're not as natural about giving it a small little clip. They need
Yeah.
the full experience for them. So, what are social capture focuses on creating clean, cohesive pages while still making content feel specific to each apartment community. How do you balance brand consistency with local authenticity?
Yeah, one of the things that we do with our clients, our partners, is work with their brand look and feel while also working with a specific social strategy that's going to keep their pages diverse, keep their pages active, and make sure that we can highlight all aspects of their community. So, depending on the client's area that they're in or their style of their community, whether they're more on the high end luxe, high rise type style, or they're more of like a homey garden style neighborhood feel, we really dive in deeply to that brand to make sure that every aspect of content creation is matching up with what the community is authentically creating for their residents. So we want to be able to, yes, create clean, beautiful, on brand content, but we also want to tap into something that feels true to the community. And if it's the coffee shop down the road, if it's the great resident events that they're hosting all the time, if it's the amazing happy hour that is in their downstairs retail space, there's so many different things that can bring out the realness of a community. And we like to tap into that and also partner with that on-site team to make sure that we're always in tune with what's happening at the community.
This is because I'm curious. What has been one of your biggest challenges? Like you have a property and it's kind of the team is, you're having a hard time getting the real personality out of the property and everything kind of seems to be adding up to the comps. So, what has been the hardest one challenge that you guys have had where you were like, you don't have to name the property, but what was that? And then how did you overcome it?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I can recall with communities is when there's like sister communities
Hmm.
that have very, very similar look and feel on purpose in a way,
Yeah.
but that they want different pages and they want to differentiate themselves. But when you even sometimes this will happen occasionally, we'll have, we're a new lease up in this area and our sister community is, 50% leased up and they opened a little bit earlier than us, construction delays or whatever was going on. And all the amenities are at our sister community, but we want our own page. But talk about the amenities, but don't mention that they're at the sister community.
Yeah.
Mention that we have them. They're for our residents. They're not for it. Just becomes a little bit of like a stunted relationship of like, how exactly are we going to create a story around something, like I said, is true? The community amenities are not on site for you. We don't want to mislead in our social storytelling here, but we also want to sell that community in the best light possible. So that is always a fun little challenge when we end up with those sort of sister community situations. And what we tend to do is really lean into user generated content
Mhm.
whenever we can, really lean into business generated content. What are the things that we can build the social part of social media? Where can we build that network of authentic content around this community where the storytelling feels natural, it feels real, it is connecting to the true resident experience? And it's not maybe focusing on some of those things that wouldn't make a resident the happiest about their community. Oh, what do you mean all of my amenities are actually 2 blocks down the road at this sister community? That's maybe not my favorite thing about where I live. But what can we do to tell that story in a way that puts the community in the best light possible? And we really love to tap into user generated content at that point
Yeah.
and get that local feel.
Yeah, I think too something, no matter what package you're on with social capture as an example, you're going to get user generated content. I think it's just invaluable with that, giving that hyper local feel, really integrating with local businesses, showcasing what's around. And then we've really invested a lot in the last few years on local photography because that stuff matters. And where we see the gap in multifamily a lot of times with these communities, we get really beautiful on-site photography and assets, but what does it look like to walk around? Like, what are those natural neighborhood amenities? I think so much of apartment marketing is not just your building, it's the location, it's what that lifestyle looks like. And so, with being able to capture local photography, we can capture, you know, the restaurant down the road. We can then collab post with them and broaden that brand awareness for your communities. And I think that's always a key differentiator. In many of these markets, we have saturated markets, right?
Mhm.
We are going to have this situation where we have sister sites. So, really focusing on their hyper local neighborhood and what makes them unique to their location as well.
Yeah, that's what I love diving into because I think that that's where sometimes, as an operations organization, we have to really find and create the right storytelling and narrative. Every property has its own story, but it's bringing that to life.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you are maybe exactly like the prototype next to you, you have to be extra creative with,
Right.
whether that's the staff or whether that is the one singular amenity that you have that they
Mhm.
don't. But I love those different challenges and seeing what kind of how creative juices can come up with things. So, something that we've moved in the direction of, which is influencers.
Mm-hmm.
So, influencer marketing is becoming a bigger conversation in multifamily. Naturally, I mean, I buy most of the products I buy based on influencers. I have been influenced. Why do you think content is becoming more relevant for apartment communities?
Creator-led content is relevant for everyone,
Yes.
literally everyone. Every industry, every single space that you're in, whether you're e-commerce, whether it's apartment marketing, every space is and should be relying on creator-led content. It's really that interface of a true lived experience and traditional marketing. You do get that partnership. You get to kind of direct a little bit about brand voice, brand storytelling. How can we make this work with our community? But you get the benefit of another creator and their own personal style and what connects with their audience. So I think with apartment marketing specifically and how influencers have started to fit into this niche is that it lends itself so well to telling the story of a day in the life, which is
Mhm.
such a popular type of influencer content. Oh, get ready with me for this event. POV, I'm at this area. Whatever the day in the life is that they're doing, that's perfectly tailored to an apartment community. And
Mhm.
so the niches really overlap in almost a perfect circle of a Venn diagram. It's like everyone wants to see their favorite influencers' day in the life. And people who are searching for apartments want to know what a day in the life at this place looks like. So it works into a perfect circle of the creator can really tell an authentic story that works for their audience and something they would connect with. And your potential renters are going to see exactly what they're looking for when they are making those decisions about where to live.
Excellent. How should multifamily teams think about choosing the right local creator or influencer for a community?
Definitely look for alignment. The alignment here is so important stylistically. A lot of people want to just look for number of followers.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those vanity metrics. Well, we worked with an influencer who had 500,000 followers. That's great. Did you get anyone in the door? If you didn't, why? 500,000 followers could mean that they have followers in LA and New York and Chicago and Atlanta. But when you're working maybe with someone who has 10,000 followers, more likely that they're just going to be in Atlanta. They're that micro influencer. So things like vanity metrics, like follower count, is really not the piece that I would steer operators towards. I would really say look for stylistic alignment. Look at their other content. If you got a video that's almost identical to everything they've posted prior, would you be happy with it? Would you like the style that they're doing? Do you like the lighting? Do you like the voiceovers? Do you like the scripting that they do? Because that's what you're going to get. You're going to get their most authentic content when you are partnering with them. If you want them to sound, look, feel totally different, then you're not aligned with that creator in the right way. So I would say always look for alignment, always look for that stylistic match. Get someone who is going to deliver something that feels authentically like themselves, and you like that. You
Mm-hmm.
like what is authentically themselves. You don't want to work with an influencer and then try to have them become someone new for you specifically.
That makes a lot of sense because then their stuff's not going to be authentic either. So,
And their audience will be able to spot that every time. And then the audience isn't going to interact with it as much. They're going to be able to know that this is clearly an ad. This is not something maybe that the influencer totally believes in. And it'll not be as successful as someone who does feel really aligned with your community.
I think some of the best campaigns I've seen is when you go to the campaign, it just seamlessly fits right through their content. It doesn't stick out like a paid ad. It feels
Mhm.
very natural to them. And what we like to do as an agency is let them have that creative freedom. They've built that audience. That audience follows them and trusts them for a reason. And so finding that kind of alignment where it fits naturally to what your community offers is ideal. So as an example, we worked in the Summerhill area with a new dev, and they were in such a walkable area for restaurants and things like that. So for that one, we worked with a foodie style influencer because that fits perfectly. She can showcase exactly what the restaurants look like around. And we gave her a little budget to go to each restaurant, pick the favorite thing at the restaurant, and gave like a whole walkable tour of that neighborhood. It was a very soft sell to the actual community itself. It didn't really show your normal model tour, but it was completely authentic to who she was as an influencer, and it leaned into that piece. And we saw over 90,000 impressions just on Instagram and then over 60,000 on TikTok just with that kind of a campaign because the alignment was there. I think that alignment is key.
How would you go about finding somebody? So I think like for me, if I'm thinking about it for our properties, Oh my goodness. How do I have the time to look at somebody's
Mhm.
content and make sure they're aligned with what I'm looking for?
Right.
So, how does social capture do that?
Well, working with a partner like Social Capture is the key here. Shameless plug. Finding the right alignment, I think, starts with identifying what type of content you want to end up with. If you know, I want to have a day in the life, traditional lifestyle content creator, that can narrow it down. We've worked with all sorts of different creators though, so really broadening the perspective of what does an influencer campaign look like. They don't all look, sound, and feel the same way. They definitely can have a lot of diversity. And when people picture an influencer in your mind, like right now, picture an influencer in your mind, what do they look like? Are they a really specific niche? Are you looking for a fitness influencer? Are you looking for a wellness influencer? Are you looking for, we've worked with dog influencers. That's a really fun one, actually. So ending up with starting kind of at the finish line and saying, what do I want to end up with here? And then working your way back towards that content creator is a nice way to approach it so that you can narrow your scope because there are so many influencers. There's so many people who are getting into content creation, whether it's UGC creation or whether they're a true traditional influencer. You could spend days and days, weeks and weeks searching through all the influencers in your area. So, kind of starting at that finish line and thinking, I really want to highlight this specific unique aspect of my community, or I just want a traditional POV, day in the life, regular walkthrough tour. That's still a great way to experiment with influencer marketing for the first time, and that'll help shape the niche that you need to look into.
So, what if we're looking for influencers that are specific to businesses, like a preferred employer program? And I know that they have, influencers of all kind. Is that something that you guys have already tapped into? Is that something that is happening in the future? What does that look like?
I think that's a pretty big challenge dependent on the employer's own internal policies. So that's
Good.
definitely something to consider. I think it's a super fun, interesting idea, and it's definitely something that could be available in the future. But I will say from personal experience, I have had friends who are content creators who began posting about their employer and were then let go because their own internal policies prevented them from posting day in the life of employed at X. And they were
Understood.
not X like Twitter, I just mean X like
Yeah.
random company.
Okay.
Um, but I think people who are content creators are becoming more aware of the risks inherent in posting about their really specific, unique situations, like their own employer. So that can be a big challenge when you do want to target something super, super specific, like, in Houston targeting energy employees. That's
Mhm.
such a huge market. We've definitely had asks for that. But a lot of those big major corporations, those big energy corporations, do have their own internal policies that prevent employees from speaking about them online.
Because I think that's a huge, when you think about, okay, what do the people listening to this podcast want to get to? They want a qualified lead.
Right.
That's what all of us are searching for right now,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
qualified lead.
And I think with influencers, the way that we like to approach it and talk about it too is that this is oftentimes going to be the very first time a prospective future renter hears about your community.
Mhm.
So it's not always about that in the door lead, someone who is actually going to come in and sign the lease. It's really about broadening that brand awareness and getting more eyes on your community. People who have never even considered you, you're getting them into the funnel for the first time through an influencer campaign.
That's a really good perspective to think about it. I like that piece of it. So, what opportunities do you see influencer marketing to support lease ups, stabilized assets, or communities in highly competitive markets?
Yeah. One of the things kind of related to that I think is a good niche to look at is if you have kind of a preferred employer, oftentimes a lot of preferred employer programs will include like fire, police, military,
Hmm.
teachers, kind of more broad rather than like this specific company.
Mhm.
And when you have, oh, this specific company, like I want X oil company they might have their own internal policies, but someone who's like, I'm a teacher and I blog about being a teacher and I do day in the life in my kindergarten classroom, and you have the preferred employee benefit for
There we
teachers,
go.
that can be a little bit more of a safe space for that, where you can kind of tailor in a niche. Or a lot of times I absolutely recommend looking at mommy bloggers. They are so engaged with their audience. They have amazing, really great content that is a lot of times going to align with the sort of general demographics that you might be looking for to get through the door, because their followers tend to be younger, starting families, working towards that maybe next step in their life of moving is going to be really natural for them. So I think there's a lot that you can work with in finding a niche for preferred employers or for specific demographics, but the very specific of one company can sometimes cause a roadblock.
No, I can see that. That's very helpful. That's a good way to kind of work around it, be more strategic with it. And I would think actually like mommy influencer, is that what you
Yeah,
said?
mommy bloggers.
Probably very trusted, right? It's
Absolutely.
your guards down. You're gonna, they're giving you good recommendations on what food or how to handle your most
One of
precious
my
being.
one of my favorite campaigns we ever did was with a mommy blogger in the Dallas area, and she specifically posts only about the DFW suburbs, and it was perfect for this community that was opening in a DFW suburb, and their whole shtick was that they had this great neighborhood suburban feel, and it was like, oh my gosh, the alignment here, going back to alignment, that's really what
Yeah.
you want to look for. And so the alignment was so perfect. And while a lot of her content did feature mostly things about motherhood and raising her kids, because she was kind of that traditional mommy blogger, this still aligned really well with her content and felt super authentic. And we ended up with fantastic engagement. Her audience was very tuned in to the content that she was posting about this community, and posted a reel, posted a carousel, had a set of stories, really worked with a full broad campaign to make sure that we were getting eyes on that community as they were preparing for a lease up. So they were about to open their doors, and she was kind of one of the first to experience the community and get that out to her followers. So it was a great piece for brand awareness.
That's wonderful. We call it a whisper campaign, so a nice
Yeah.
little whisper. So, beyond likes and followers, what metrics should multifamily teams pay closer attention to when evaluating social media and influencer campaigns? I know we talked a little bit about that already, but is there anything extra that you really want to say? Am I getting the most out of this campaign?
I think with campaigns in general, I know a big struggle in our space is really getting operators and owners to understand the value
Hmm.
of it, because they don't get the hard leads and leases that everyone's looking for. And so I think a good way to frame the value of it is you're getting high quality production. Think about if you send someone in to get that videography, that photography, that narration, you're getting all of that in one kind of production house with an influencer. And something that we've seen to really expand on getting the most shelf life out of your campaigns is negotiating rights usages with these influencers. So, getting the rights usages, being able to repurpose that content into ads campaign, selling it in that where it's a long term ads campaign, going into that really sells, because we're all influenced, right? When you're seeing someone really stick their neck out, give their personal experience on the brand, it just goes farther. And that's what people are craving. And so being able to really turn that into not just an influencer campaign, but a long term ads campaign to really drive that traffic into qualified leads and leases is something I think is really valuable in being able to pitch this service and why it matters for your owners.
I think that's super helpful just because, to your point, a lot of our current clients, while I may be influenced heavily by my social media, they most likely are not.
Yeah.
So they don't really see the value. That's
Right.
not how they're doing their
Yeah.
purchasing. And eventually we'll probably see that change. But right now that's definitely a gap in the
Mhm.
communication. So I love that social capture is willing to come in and help us have those conversations and have some other metrics for them to look at and have the campaign be more meaningful for
Mhm.
them.
Yeah. And the nice thing with what Aaron was mentioning of negotiating that ads usage rights, you can turn it into a campaign that has some of those more traditional metrics that people are used to evaluating, click-through rate, cost per click, getting people onto your website, number of conversions, things like that are available on an ads campaign using the footage from an organic influencer campaign. Whereas if you just work with an influencer in sort of the traditional sense, they'll post it on their page, they'll have it up, you'll get engagement, you'll get impressions, you'll get views, but you won't necessarily get those hard statistics that are showing ROI. It's more about that top of funnel conversion of we're now getting people to consider us for the first time. And that can be such a sticking point for operators of, well, how many people actually called? How many people came in? I want to know how many people signed.
Those are the exact questions.
Yes.
That's just not where their brains are.
Yeah.
Right? They're thinking bottom line.
Yeah. Which is, then if you can come back with, okay, well, we ran this organic campaign, it got a ton of impressions. We have a ton of brand awareness, which is great. But then we flipped it and turned it into a 60-day ad campaign, and we ended up with this click-through rate and this number of conversions on the website. Then it's like, oh, those are the facts that I needed. Like, that's what I really wanted to hear about. So being able to negotiate those usage rights up front with the influencer definitely does affect the amount needed to spend on influencer campaigns. And I think just like consumers are getting more and more educated, influencers themselves are getting more educated about their own value that they bring. And so that's something that we always look at upfront with our influencer campaigns when we're working to design the campaign deliverables is, can we get some ads usage rights in there as well?
Wonderful. So final question. Looking ahead, how should owners and operators think differently about social media when evaluating a management company's ability to market, operate, and tell the story of an asset?
So I would just challenge multifamily ownership groups when they're evaluating to look beyond the occupancy rates, your normal checklist that you're looking at, and really look at the digital footprint. Look in behind the scenes on the Facebook pages, the Instagram. Do they look lived in? Do they look like they're cared about? I think that shows. And if a management company is willing to invest in their digital footprint, take time, care, and consideration in that strategy, I think that shows that you really care about those details. And that ownership can then trust that if you're going to take care of even the small stuff as posting on Instagram, you'll take care of all the details I need, and I can trust my asset with you.
Love that. Any other final words?
I think that was a great way to put it.
I think so too. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you guys coming for the podcast. And I hope everybody got a little something to take away from this.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.